Good afternoon and welcome to the latest in our series of live career webinars brought to you by HOP. So HOP is the Hertfordshire Opportunities Portal. It is a website that we hope every young person and every school in Hertfordshire is aware of and using, because it's a portal where you can gain a lot of information about future career decisions that you're going to make. And this webinar is a big part of our HOP platform because it gives you the opportunity to hear directly from a professional and an expert within a particular career area that you are interested in. And today's career focus is going to be careers in interior design. So firstly, for those of you that are watching this session live at the moment, so it's 4:30 on Thursday, well done for coming home from school and deciding that the best use of your time is to come on and join our webinar, because hopefully in this session you're going to find out a lot more about what it's actually like to work in interior design, what sort of courses or qualifications or subjects you might want to choose to help you get there, and hopefully just a bit of inspiration so that you know that actually this is a really good career route for you. So by watching this session live at the moment, you've got the opportunity not only to hear from Hayley, who I'm going to introduce to you in a moment, but you're going to have the opportunity to put your own questions to her. Now, don't worry, we can't see or hear any of you, and that will be the case throughout the webinar. But the way that you can interact with us is via the questions tab on your dashboard. So if you have a look at that, if you open that out, it will provide you with a text box. You type your questions into there and they come through directly through to me, so they won't be visible to anyone else. It's not like a live chat on YouTube. It's only visible to me, and then I can direct that question on to Hayley. So I know a number of you have already submitted questions when you registered, and there's some really great questions in there, which we'll make sure we cover anyway. But any extra questions that you want to ask, or something you perhaps didn't feel that we covered well enough, then please do type your question in. The webinar we think will last for probably up to about an hour, so it'll take us through to 5:30. It is being recorded, so if you can't stay through to the end of it, or even if you can stay to the end of it, but you want to watch it back and just remind yourself of some of the information that's covered here today, it will be available via our HOP social media channels, principally YouTube. So you can see all of our links on there. If you're not already signed up to HOP, please do, and you can access not only this video but all the previous 55 videos I think that we've created over the last couple of years, covering a range of different career areas. So again, really use that opportunity that you got today to put your questions through to Hayley, who is our panelist. So look, without any further ado, I am going to ask Hayley to introduce herself to you, and then we will get started. So Hayley, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Could I ask you please to introduce yourself and also introduce your company?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, and hello everybody. My name is Hayley Lane. I am the creative team leader for a company called Woodhouse Workspace. I have been an interior designer for nearly 16 years now, which saying that is quite hard. Since I left university. I have been a workspace designer, so that is what Woodhouse do, Woodhouse Workspace. We design commercial offices and workspace environments. They have been going for around sort of 40 or so years now, family run business based in Hatfield, so nice and local in the Hertfordshire area. Previously I have worked for very similar companies, from extremely large organisations of, you know, up to sort of 900 to 1,000 people, and Woodhouse Workspace is around 25 people, so I've really sort of seen the spectrum of my part of the interior design industry over the years. And I studied commercial interior architecture at Bournemouth University, so I've always had a bit of a passion for it, so hopefully I can impart some of that on you guys today. I'm sure
you will, Hayley. Well, I mean, that's a very basic question. I'm sure that everyone who's looked onto this has got a fairly good idea anyway, but just tell us, what does an interior designer actually do, and what are perhaps the strands of interior design?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one because there are a few different types of interior design. So I think what people naturally go towards is residential interior design, which is a stunning career. I mean, you can delve into the lovely luxury interiors and you know, spend wealthy people's money. It's excellent. So there is that side of it. So you've got residential, and in which case you would probably be in either sort of freelancing and you would have maybe your own company. People do tend to sort of have their own companies when they go residential, or they can work for one of the more well-known organisations, or, which is what I do, is commercial interior design. And within that, there's even a few different strands and sectors, and I'll sort of try and simplify it almost. So what I do, I work for a design and build company. So we design the space in-house as well as the construction. So I get to go on really lovely building sites all the time and see my creations come to life, which is probably the most rewarding thing in the world. Also within the commercial sector, there is what you would call sort of traditional or consultancy designers. Now, these don't necessarily work for a company that also builds it. So they may not be as involved or seeing that more sort of tangible space come to life. It may well be that they've sort of moved on by then, and then it gets built separately from them sometimes. So there's a few different strands to even my side of the industry, but residential and commercial is usually the way people categorize it.
When did you first learn what interior design was, and for how long was that a career aspiration for you?
Do you know, this is quite an interesting story actually. I had a really academic upbringing, like always had creativity and courage, but it was seen as a hobby when I was a little bit younger. Which is lovely, and it absolutely is a hobby. Everyone sort of gets into sort of arts and crafts and everything when they're younger. It's really encouraged. It keeps your brain active. So when I went to college, I went to North Hertfordshire College in Stevenage. I had quite academic GCSEs even, you know, I didn't even take art at GCSE. You know, I took the more business minded things, so business studies, things that I thought could sort of take me anywhere almost. And I think a subject like business studies, it's very valuable. And then again at college, I did really academic A levels. So I did sociology, psychology, English literature, and business studies. So even then, extremely academic. But these are all also things that I think are so valuable in any aspect of life. I then realized, and I think I sort of came into my own maybe when I was maybe 16, 17, and realized that actually my heart and what I really gravitate towards is creativity. And I really wanted to apply those A levels to that and see where that could take me. So what I actually did, again, North Hertfordshire College, I did an evening course in residential interior design. So I got a diploma in, I think it was an AQA back then. I don't know what it might be now. But yeah, so I did a diploma every Tuesday night for a year. I studied residential interior design in the evenings. And that's how I kind of realized that actually your hobby or your passion, your creativity can really become a career. And that's where, you know, my tutor at that point really showed me that. Yeah.
Okay, no, it's a really comforting message. I think for a lot of people there to know that things that are your hobbies and your passion can well go on to be your occupation and your job. I mean, did you find yourself even subliminally at an early age sort of walking into someone's front room and thinking, why have they got the sofa over there? Why's that there? Or is that something that happens to you later in your career journey?
Yeah, I think naturally I think especially in residential and in homes, you kind of expect there to be a focal point, which you can apply to pretty much any type of design, commercial as well. You know, I mean, I suppose in a living room, it might be the TV, and that's your focal point. And in which case, how is everything positioned around that? I think, yeah, at a very young age, I think I was spatially aware. Now, I didn't know what being spatially aware was back then, though. But now when I think about it, I almost have that hindsight. I'm like, oh, yes, actually, that's really true. It did follow me along. And then, you know, creativity in terms of painting and color matching and even fashion, I really got into, like, which is fabric choices and things like that. And that's also applicable as you go along. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, okay. So just thinking about what you do on a day-to-day basis now, what does an average day look like? So before coming on this webinar, what does Thursday look like for you?
Well, firstly, I'm working from home, which isn't an average day for me. Typically, I do tend to go into the office, which I know is quite unusual now. One thing I will say about that is there is never an average day if you are an interior designer. It's one of my favourite things about my career, about the industry as a whole, is because you have so many different clients and they're all so different and they have their uniqueness and their quirks. You're never going to have the same day twice, which I think is kind of the beauty of it almost. You know, you're not going in and looking at data and the same thing every day. It's what you make it. Average day for me, as the leader of a team, obviously I have to get in and make sure that my team are okay first. So we all have a bit of a creative huddle in the morning where we might find something like a new product or a new fabric or a new texture that we've seen and we really want to share with each other, and it's 15 minutes, it's not long. We just have what I call a creative sprint. We then get into kind of what are we going to do that day, and I make sure that they've all got the support that they need, and that they're all, you know, achieving their goals. For example, if I'm working on a project, I will get into the depths of that. I will be specifying absolutely everything from the lighting, the furniture, the flooring, the finishes, the door handles, the door locks, all the way down to the absolute tiniest little screw, what colour are the screws, everything really, which, you know, it really does become your baby. I'll have client meetings. I'm a client-facing designer. Some aren't, which is absolutely fine if the prospect of presenting or pitching your work in front of people is really like, oh, you know, I wouldn't let that hold you back. You know, you start somewhere and you can present in front of people, or you don't have to. It's, you know, it's kind of what you make it. If I'm in the depths of a pitch, then I'm usually very much, you know, I'm putting 3D visuals together. I do them myself as well. I haven't always, but I have recently learned Revit, which is an amazing 3D tool you can use. So even 16 years down the line, I'm still pushing myself to learn new things. So I'll get into the Revit, I'll create 3D visuals, I might do a presentation, I'll go to lunch with my team. So yeah, I think each day is very different. So, but the average day typically would be getting into a project, the details of it, meeting with the client, and just collaborating with my team.
Sure. Okay, that sounds like a nice variety. And to segue into my next question, your passion for interior design is really coming through. It's really shining through at the moment. So much so, it's actually literally shining through the window into my face. So I'm gonna shut my blind when you answer the next question. But what I want to know is, what are the most challenging aspects of the job that perhaps people, you know, should be aware of that maybe wouldn't necessarily know about until you've actually started working in the industry?
Yeah, you know, I think sometimes, and that's right to say, like it looks very glamorous, and it is, don't worry. But the thing is, and probably the most challenging thing is, you do have to balance a client with your own creativity. Sometimes, you know, it's very easy to really run with a design and just go on and on and on and on and on, whereas actually a client has a specific budget. They always come with a budget. There is never a blank check, sadly. So it's kind of about balancing your own creativity when you're bursting with it, and actually this is the client's aspiration and this is the client's budget, and what can you do with your creativity for that budget? You know, the client still wants like the best workspace for me, for example, ever, but their budget might be not quite matching their aspirations. So that's probably the biggest challenge, is just making sure that the client does get what they want, but making sure that they're, you know, comfortable with the budget as well.
Yeah, sure. No, I can understand that. So I can see there's a number of questions coming in already, which is really positive. So do get your questions coming in. Believe me, we've got a whole chunk of time allocated within this webinar specifically to answer your questions as they come in. Next sort of couple of questions, though, I want you to, or discussion points for us, is just to think about those subjects that you might need, or the sorts of skills or qualities. And I know from the registration, a lot of people have got interest or want to know this out. So first of all, tell us, why did you choose the degree course you did? You said you went to Bournemouth. So how much sort of choice was there when you were choosing a university, and what was important for you? And then perhaps in hindsight, did you think you made the right choice? Was there somewhere else you could have gone?
Yeah, so I did, as I said, I did commercial interior architecture at Bournemouth University. It was known for its creative aspirations at Bournemouth. They also have an art and design school that's paired with the university. My course, sorry, my course was actually at the university, but we could use the resources of the design school, which for me was a big, sorry, was a big draw. Because I think having that resource there, I think that's one of the things when looking at schools, colleges or universities is actually looking at the resources. They might sort of say, yes, we've got a library, go and visit that library, see what's in it. Don't just sort of assume that it's going to be full of all the books you need. Go and actually really delve into what they're going to offer you. I chose interior architecture because I knew I wanted to get into the commercial side of things. Now, if you're more into the residential side, you don't necessarily need to do that. In actual fact, you probably don't necessarily need to go to university at all. If that is also a bit of a daunting thought, and if you don't want to, absolutely, you can become more so a residential interior designer with college diplomas and summer experience. You know, if you know someone, or if you send out, you know, emails and emails and emails to someone and getting like a summer internship, that's the kind of thing that you'll really benefit from, especially with residential. I would say with commercial, you will more likely need to go to university because there are a lot more legalities that you have to deal with in the commercial world. You are sort of dealing with, you know, thousands of humans interacting with the space, so things like fire regulations and inclusivity and being aware of neurodiversity, which is, you know, how humans react to space. So I think I knew I wanted to be in the commercial world. That's why I chose university to go to. I had 4 to choose from, so I was very lucky. I chose the one that had, it was called a sandwich course. It had in my 3rd year, a year out that you get to go into the industry and work for a year, which was the most invaluable thing I've ever done. You know, I've spent a year being a sponge of knowledge of people that were actually in the industry, getting their business cards. So when I graduated, I went straight into a job, and I have never been out of a job since then. So that was yeah, so a sandwich was the other 3 universities didn't have that, so it was incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, okay. So I'm looking at the sort of the registrations that we've had in people watching this webinar now. I can see there's a whole range of people from year 10 up to year 13. You mentioned that you didn't do art as an A level. You did you said you did business and English. And you're laughing about it now, but looking back, what subjects would you recommend someone does, or are there any real prerequisite subjects that you think someone absolutely must do or really should do?
Yeah, so I must admit, when I was interviewing for university, actually I was the only person in that entire year, and the people that were sort of around me interviewing at the same time, that hadn't done some sort of art or art and design, or even sort of textiles or something as an A level, and then they followed that into college and did something that was art and design at college as well. So don't get me wrong, I really do think some form of art and design, it doesn't have to necessarily be art. If you know, you can do, as I said, you can do textiles if that's still a subject. Anything like that, where you're creating something from scratch and you are looking at color composition and textures and how things work together. If you have a subject that you know encompasses those, then you're really not going to go too far wrong. I would also advise anchoring that with something a little bit more academic, so something like business studies or something like English literature, because that will help you present yourself into the world, if you see what I mean. You know, English literature especially, and business studies, you learn how to be in front of people and be in front of employers and be in front of clients. So those types of subjects matched with an artistic subject would work really well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's very easy when you're at school and you're going through GCSEs or A-level or equivalent, or perhaps even at university, you can really get bogged down by which subjects or specific subjects you should do. And I think often we find in industry that actually employers are usually more interested in the skills and qualities that someone has. So just from your experience and some of the, your team members and people that you work with, what are the skills and qualities that all good interior designers will have?
I would probably say being personable is definitely one. So being a person that people can talk to and open up to. We have to tease the brief out of clients that have no idea what they want or need, and that probably goes for every client. So being a person that can almost nurture a client and make them feel comfortable so that they are opening up to you, that's probably one of the biggest things I would say to start with. Being able to analyze a brief, so even though you may be a creative person, you need to read between the lines of a brief and kind of take a step back and look at it holistically, like as a whole, because you're going to have to put that into a building. So being a fairly analytical person, like someone that's into details, is definitely a really key feature of pretty much any designer I know. The vast majority of designers I know, even though we do present in front of clients, I'm an extrovert. The vast majority of the designers are introverts. A little bit of a weird anomaly like that. So we do present to clients. So having some sort of presentation skills, it might be quite daunting and it will be at first, but once you've done a few, honestly, it starts to come naturally. And I remember even when I very first started, I used to get super nervous. I would say having some form of start point of presentation skills would help as well.
Sure. Okay, so some good lessons there for you from Hayley, thinking about the skills or qualities that you might need. We always ask the question about what experiences someone could gain, regardless of A-level choices or where they are in that career pathway. We joked earlier about whether you'd go into someone's living room and think, oh, why have they put that there and that there? But I'm not encouraging any of you to go into your classrooms first thing tomorrow and rearrange the desks without your teacher's permission. But are there sort of everyday things at home or at school or community centres that you'd encourage people interested in interior design to start perhaps being curious about or questioning? Or
I'd challenge everything if I was you at this point. I encourage you to go in and say, if you walk into a room and you know that there is a fundamental problem with that space, and you actually probably know that the vast majority of your schoolmates, your school colleagues will think the same. If something's really, really bright behind you, like you closed your blinds earlier, for example, if you know something's positioned wrong and you can't do your activity in that space correctly, then absolutely challenge think we should be doing. It's going to benefit us because of this, and this. We're going to be able to be more productive because the sun's not in our eyes, or something like that. If you know there's a challenge in that room, you can fix it and make everyone else's life better, absolutely do it. I completely encourage that.
So, I mean, thinking about a standard classroom which is set out in a particular way, what sort of things should people be thinking about in the composition of a classroom? You spoke about light there as well, and what are the factors that you think are important?
So much the same to a workspace, actually. I could really compare it to a workspace. So in a classroom and for your own productivity. So really what you're doing when you're designing something, and the things that you should be thinking about are the humans in the space. It's not necessarily about the space as a whole, it's the humans using it, because it has to be effective for those humans. Otherwise it's not designed well at all. For humans to thrive, they need natural light. So you do need natural light, but obviously you can't have the glare on a screen if you're on a laptop, so you need to position things correctly. The natural light is key. The actual lighting in the room, so if you've actually got physical lights above your head, what is that doing for? Is it too bright? Is it too dim? What's that doing for your activity? Is it giving you a headache? Having really lovely things like natural tones, natural textures like wood textures, biophilia, which is biophilia is the human connection to nature. It's anything from a plant to wood to even the colour green, and humans need an innate connection to nature. We need it to be productive. So it's understanding things like that when you walk into a room. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that makes people feel productive and happy in their space. That's what people should be thinking about.
Sure. Okay. Well, there you go. That gives you all something to think about when you're either in your homes or in your classrooms tomorrow.
I'm going to get told off by so many teachers now.
We may well do. Yeah. Do not rearrange your teachers' classrooms without getting their permission first.
Ask permission first.
Absolutely. Last little sort of discussion point from me, Katie, before we come on to the questions that have come in, of which there's numerous in here. So this is really just to reassure people watching this that there's a demand for interior designers out there, so specifically in Hertfordshire, and that there will continue to be. So we know that we're going into a career where there's a growth area. So first of all, what reassurances can you give us that there's really strong demand for interior designers? And then the other thing that I'm interested to find out from you about is, if people go into interior design, what are the sort of natural avenues that they might branch out into as a result?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the beautiful things we have about Hertfordshire is that we border London. So that is probably one of the biggest reassurances I can give you, is London is still one of the capitals of the world. It very much is still one of the financial capitals of the world. Buildings are going up all over the place. Like every time I go into London, which is maybe once or twice a week, I feel like I see a different skyline. So in terms of commercial interiors, especially know that my side of the industry is booming, and it always will. So to explain real estate, for example, for a little while, a person might go into an office, they will have a lease for either 5 or 10 years. So every 5 to 10 years, that person needs to move. And that's just it's ticking over and over and over, because every company in London pretty much has that exact same thing, and Hertfordshire and all across the country. So no matter what, there is going to be what we call a lease event, and that person's something. So, certainly my part of the industry is definitely not going anywhere. It's actually, with what's happened with the pandemic and this whole sort of hybrid working, some people, you'll realize that maybe your parents and or brothers and sisters have been working quite a lot with that kind of mixture of things going on. It's actually been quite an interesting time. Residential I can't speak for as much because it isn't what I do. However, I do know quite a few residential interior designers, and they tend to travel all over the world. So that's probably one of the ones that, if you were thinking globally, if they've got a client that's got a house in London, they've also got a house somewhere else, etc., etc. So that one can take you to all sorts of places. And from what I'm seeing, that's also not going anywhere, although it might be one that is more at risk. I think commercial is probably less a risky option for interior designers. So yeah, I mean, like I said, there's always lease events, and us being so close to London, it really is, it's quite tangible to feel. It's it's great to be in. Other avenues that you could go down with this career, and actually a few of the people that I went to university with have done this. They've not become commercial interior designers. A few of them have got into fashion. So anything with the word design off it, pretty much. So like fashion design, for example. If you're a person that has a creative qualification of whatever it is, whether that be art, interior design diploma at college or university, if you have that creativity in you, you can pretty much put that into any creative career. So, fashion, for example, you are choosing textures, colours, compositions. It's all these things that can be transferable across. You can become a lecturer, even. You can take it into, go back and teach other people. There's lots of other things that you can do as well. In terms of the actual construction industry, if you decide that design isn't necessarily the thing you want to be in, but you do want to be in the construction industry, you still want to be around design, you could become, a project manager. You could be the person that manages the entire team and that manages the build of a project. So you see this beautiful construction coming up. So you can apply it to kind of any construction level as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, well, look, we've had, say, a number of really good questions already come in, so I want to make sure that we get as many of those to you as we can. So let me just read these as they come in. So if you've got questions you want to submit, we've had a few come in already. Click on the questions tab. That will open out a text box. Type it in there. It comes directly through to me. So. How do you convert your passion for interior design into a job/career? Was it an easy process?
I definitely wouldn't say it was easy. as I said, so when I was at university, I had that year out in the industry, which was probably one of the most eye-opening times of my life. Actually, I think, in actual fact, I probably learned more in that 1 year than I did the other 3 that I was at university. It's one of those things that actually you probably grow into a little bit. So I remember when I first came into the industry, I didn't know, you know, I knew I was creative and I knew I had this qualification and I knew I was passionate, but I didn't necessarily know what products were out there, you know, or anything like that. So I had to start really, like, I remember I really delved into the industry, and like furniture manufacturers, flooring, all these things you'll learn about, you know, fabrics, artwork, all of these things. You don't learn that actually up until your qualification necessarily. So you kind of have to immerse yourself into it. And once I'd started immersing myself into it, I found myself sort of just really naturally bringing things together, and then add with the passion side of it, and really just wanting and feeling hungry. What you will feel once you've sort of started getting into it is really hungry for it, and that's where you have to kind of anchor that and push yourself into it and research and yeah, and pull that all together. So it didn't necessarily come naturally. I pushed myself, but that feeling of hunger came quite naturally.
Good. Let's have a look. Did you find it easy to find a job physically doing design as opposed to working for an interior design firm, not actually doing the design part? Is it easy to find this within a firm?
As in becoming an interior designer within a firm, was it easy to do that? Yeah. Is that, yeah. As I said, so a bit of a, like, if you do want to become a commercial interior designer, I would actively encourage people to look for a sandwich course and get that year in the industry, because that then became extremely valuable. I became an interior designer within a company immediately. I was known as a graduate designer. That's what, you know, I have a graduate designer that works for me now. She's worked for me for about 8 months now. People are always looking for graduates because you're the next generation. So I always have a graduate that works for me. I always have, that I mentor up, and then I get another one. And you know, and you teach them, and they either stay with you or you teach them and they go off, sort of thing. But actually becoming an interior designer, you know, you will become that pretty immediately when you get into a company. You know, that's what they're employing you to do, especially if you have quite a specific qualification. That is what I would say about interior design, is if you do it at university, that it's quite specific. You know, that's obviously what you want to do for a job. Whereas perhaps something like English literature or history, it's not as specific. You can do quite a few different things and different avenues with that. Whereas, you know, with interior design, it's your passion pretty much.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a question here about university. So I'm considering going to university to study interior design. Are these courses worth it, bearing in mind the debts and costs to study? So, I mean, how did you juggle that? Because you obviously gained a lot from the degree, which you've just spoken about, but it's not all plain sailing, is it?
No, absolutely not. And do you know what? I think it's genuinely criminal how much money you end up spending. And I think I've been doing this 16 years now, and I paid off my student debt about 6 years ago. So it took me about 10 years. So don't get me wrong, it's tough going. And I started university before, like, the fees went up and you had to do that double loan thing. Oh, crazy. And I get it, especially now in this sort of day and age where the cost of living is increasing massively. And so what do? You know, when you come out of university, you're faced with debt as well as having to get in the real world. For commercial interior design, if that's what you want to do, I really would suggest it, and it is worth it. It is hard work. The first year is all fun and games, and that doesn't even usually count towards your degree, because they just want you to get used to being an independent human that might be away from your family. So typically the first year won't count, but you want to do well, you know, and your second and third and fourth year will count, of course. It for the commercial world. Yeah, for residential, if that's what you want to do, I wouldn't say so. I think actually residential, you can do diplomas at college, and then I would just actively really get yourself out there, put your name out there, like Google residential interior designers nearby. I know there's some links at the end of this that I've sort of put forward that that will help you as well, and just get your name out there, make some phone calls, try and get into like internships, even if it's a couple of weeks at a time with people, and build up your knowledge and your skill base from there.
Sure. Okay. Another question here about uni, which I'll ask because it's sort of related to the last one. Would you recommend taking a placement year at uni? I'm worried if I do it, I won't want to go back to uni for the last year.
Yeah, I had that. I had the exact same thing. You know, like I said, I learned more in my placement year than I did probably the other 3 years all put together. What you do realise at the end of your placement, even though you will really enjoy it, I do recommend it. It is if I can give you any advice today, and if you're going to go to university, find a placement year course. It was the most valuable thing for me. When you graduate at the same time as not only your own university, but every other university in this country with the same degree as tens of thousands of people, you want to be the person that stands out. And you want to be the person on their CV, it says, I worked with this person for a year, these are the people I know, this is what I did, these are the projects I worked on. It's incredibly valuable. What you do realise when you get in the industry is that you won't get back into it without that degree. So you have to finish that degree. You probably won't get employed without it in the commercial world anyway. So you realise how much you want it and how much you want to get back to it. So you just get on with that final year, get your head down, get a good degree, and yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, all will be well.
There's a couple of questions here about, do you have to do a degree or are there apprenticeships that are available? So I don't know whether you know from sort of an institute perspective whether they're looking to add an interior design apprenticeship onto the framework.
All the companies that I've worked for, one of which is third largest in the country, and they have graduate schemes. They don't necessarily have sort of learn from school or college schemes. So it does start at graduate really, because you do need the sort of the base knowledge of the sort of the commercial world and all of the legalities to it. There's quite a lot of stuff you have to learn before kind of even getting into it. And yes, and you could learn that on the job, but that would be a full-time job for someone to teach you, if you see what I mean. So that's probably why it's not done so much. You would get onto a graduate scheme, but probably not before that in the commercial world. Residential, as I said, different story. You really could, absolutely. I would encourage you, if you want to do residential, to just get your name out there and make phone calls.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Another question, do you ever have long periods of time where you don't get clients? No.
Oof, my goodness, that would no. Typically I'm running around 10 to 12 clients at a time. So and they're all at different stages. So that one will be right at the beginning, and then one will be right at the end. So then that one will drop off, and then another one. And you know, it's a beautiful, never-ending story.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I guess that comes down to the strength of you as a business and your marketing and promotion, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you know what? That's very much, actually, I've just spoken from my own experience. If you weren't looking to go into a business, if you go into a business as a designer, you will really never struggle with that. However, if you become a freelance designer, that might be a slightly different story. You might really, if you're going to do that, which it's a fantastic role to be in, quite a few of my friends are freelance. Quite a few of them are banded together. You know, if one of them thinks that a client isn't their skill set but knows someone that is, it's they've got a bit of a collective going on. But if you're going to do freelance, you really have to wear a lot of hats. You have to, know that business side of things as well. So I would recommend, if you wanted to go for a freelance side, make sure you've got business studies or something like that behind you, because you absolutely have to do that. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be your own salesperson, and sort of get into companies or get clients to come to you.
Yeah, okay. Do you ever do the designing, brackets painting or decorating, or just the planning?
I do everything. I'm not physically painting, decorating, don't get me wrong, I'm not holding a paintbrush. No, I do absolutely everything. So from spatial design, all of the client interaction, choosing every single finish. So if you walked into a room and you saw paint on the walls, floor, ceiling, lights, the mechanical and the electrical as well, so air conditioning, all that kind of stuff, all of the furniture that's chosen, the fabrics and the furniture, right down to what plants go in there. Absolutely every single thing.
Okay,
it's
good.
Amazing.
Is there a lot of maths involved? I think that's a really interesting question, actually, because I suspect you're going to say that there is maths involved. It's not necessarily something that you would consider.
There's a little bit, not as much as you would think. But just don't get me wrong, I'm not amazing at that. And it's not something I took on further at school either, or college, etc. The architecture side of things, so if you were looking at actual architecture, so we're talking buildings, absolutely, maths, physics, engineering, all of that really has to come into it. That's a much longer course. There's a reason for that. Obviously, you want buildings to stay up. So, you know, at university, you definitely need to go to university. It's a long course, but it's obviously fantastic. So with that side of things, yes, definitely. With sort of the interior design side, yes, you do, because you need to understand sort of the square meterage of buildings or square footage, and you know where petitioning goes, like all of the walls. You need to understand. Yeah, you do need to work out a few things, but it's definitely not major.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And thankfully, computers do most of it for you.
This one, you've spoken around this, but I'm going to ask you the question. You can give us a very direct answer for it. Do you know what the future opportunities are, or do you know what the future opportunities are for residential interior design? I've heard it is very difficult to get into and not very well paid.
It's the lesser paid of the two if you don't own the company. So typically with residential companies, the majority of them are sort of owned by one person, and they would have paid their dues. They would have come in as a junior, paid their dues, and then they would sort of gone off on their own and own their own company. At that level, yeah, you're all right. You're doing quite well. If you sort of come in at entry level, it can be tough going. It is, I think with a lot of things, you do have to pay your dues. You come in as a junior, you work hard, you learn a lot. You're learning from people that have been in the industry for a long time and that are successful. Like it's one of those things that, and I remember I had the exact same experience. I felt so lucky that this person was spending their time teaching me. And I realized that, even if you leave uni, if you do go to uni or college, you're always learning. So yes, I think there is opportunity. I think it's a little bit more difficult with residential because you will go in quite low, and you'll work and work and work. But if that's what you want to do, it's difficult to explain. But with interior design, it's a passion. It really is. So it'll be something that you feel you really want to do, and you'll want to work hard for it. You really will. So if it's your passion, then do it. It's creative people are like that. It's not it's not an office job. It's not you're not sitting in a bank, which are all fantastic jobs. But if you're a creative person, you'll be willing to do all of those things.
Sure. Okay, good. So is commercial interior design commission based per job you do? What's the mechanics of it? How does it work?
So it's not commission based. However, companies have bonus schemes. I've worked for companies that they do either two different ways basically. So one way you would get your wage, your monthly wage, and you would get project-based commission. So you would earn, say, 1 to 2% of the profits of that job. Now that becomes extremely good. I'm not going to lie. If you're doing a job that's worth £2 million, they're making 25 to 30% profit of that. You're making 1 to 2% of that every project you do. So it's the company's way of actively encouraging you to win more projects, because then that makes them more money, but it does also make you more money. So even if you feel like your starting rate when you sort of get in the industry is low, it will be plus bonus. It like always plus bonus. The other way of doing it, which is the way that my company do it, that I think is actually fairer, is we have a team bonus. So if we hit a certain tier each month of invoicing, we get a bonus, and that's the whole team. That's everyone. That's from like office management, marketing, accounts. That's everyone. Whereas if you do a project-based commission, it's just the people that worked on that project, and the people back at the office that have supported you the whole way through don't get anything, which I think isn't quite as fair.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's the final question that we've had in so far. There's another question about would you recommend an apprenticeship? We kind of spoke around that, and just I've been doing a bit of research because we would always look to promote apprenticeship opportunities as alternatives, but looks like that perhaps just interior design hasn't quite yet come up with the right framework for an actual apprenticeship. The recommendation that I saw on the Go Construct website was that if you really wanted to do an advanced apprenticeship, they do them in things like furniture design technicians, which might be a kind of a side route into the industry. So there may be some more peripheral apprenticeships that are available.
Furniture design is a great one. It's a really good one. Yeah.
So there you go. That could be that could be an option for you. And you said that word design is quite key, and actually that's probably quite transferable.
If it says the word design in it, pretty much anything applies.
Yeah, across a number of them. So I'm going to ask all of you, if you have got any more questions for Hayley, now is your time to get them in. Just as I'll give you the opportunity to do that, Hayley, you have shared with me, I'm just waiting for it to come up on the screen here, you've shared with me some really good websites that you recommend people look at to just a bit of further reading really about some of the things we've spoken about today. So do you want to just explain what some of these websites are and why they might be useful for anyone as a follow-up?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, the person that asked the question about residential design, the bottom left one there, I would actively encourage you to have a little look at that. So that's by the House and Garden magazine. You might have seen that, in many places or on in your local shop. It's quite easy to get. Again, I would actively encourage you guys to get those as well, because they'll have lots of information in them. So House and Garden is quite a good one, but that's literally steps on how to become pretty much a residential interior designer, and it'll give you little hints and tips on how to do that. The other ones are kind of institutes that are partnered with corporations as well. So for example, BIID and the British College of Interior Design and BAID will have affiliate companies with them that will have graduate schemes or internships or anything like that. So I would look at those and see who they partner with, and try and get some contacts there. And it also has tons of information on how to get into the industry, especially if you don't want to go to university, which it's not like 100% necessary. If you want to become an interior designer, you absolutely can do that through internships, etc. It just maybe as the commercial world isn't quite switched onto that yet. But these will kind of give you an idea and maybe give you some actual company names and some affiliates that you can have a look at.
Sure. I'll just leave that slide up there, and obviously you can take pictures of those via the QR codes. Ironically, we've had a question about deadlines, just as I set a deadline for getting your questions in. So well done for Ben for getting this in just in time. Is it stressful work with tight deadlines? How do you manage that?
It can be. It absolutely can be. Luckily, it balances with being rewarding, which I realise I sound like the cheesiest person in the world when I say that. It's extremely rewarding, but yes, it's really hard work, and it can be early mornings and late nights. If we have a pitch, we pitch to win clients. We have competitors, they all pitch as well. You have to be the best, or at least for your client, be the best. At times like that, yeah, absolutely, it's tough work, it's long hours. It can be, but if you win and then you get to see it built, those few extra hours at work really don't make a difference. And actually, if you get into a good company, the few extra hours at work you'll get back, they'll be like go home on a Friday afternoon at like 12 or whatever. In the real world, you get those hours back.
For sure. Okay, thank you. Well, I think those are all the questions that we're going to have in now. I think it's been some really, really fantastic questions. So well done, for joining the webinar, and thank you for contributing your questions, and hopefully they've been really useful. As I just put up the very final slide, if I could just ask if I should ask those of you that are watching this live at the moment, if there is anything that we've covered today that's really helped you, would you mind just dropping it in as a question, so then we can take that out and we can use it as a quote to help promote the webinar across all of our schools in Hertfordshire. So if there's anything you found particularly useful, or just in general, any sort of feedback that you could give us about how this webinar has been useful for you, do just share that with us in the chat right now. I just want to make everyone aware of our HOP website. I mentioned it at the start of the session. We really hope that it's something that you all become familiar with and that you use in school and outside of school. You can see we've got our social media handles on there as well. We've also got TikTok as well, whatever that is, for HOP as well. The QR code in the top left-hand corner, if you click through on that, that will take you through to our library of all of the careers webinars that we've been running back since 2020. So do encourage you to go and have a look in there. You may well find that there are some related topics or areas that we've covered in the past that you may want to go and watch back, and they'll be exactly the same format as this. So do make the most of the HOP platform. Thank you. Like I said, there's a couple of comments that have come in there of feedback, which is fantastic. So in closing, let me thank Hayley so much for giving up her time this afternoon to share her experiences with us. So Hayley, thank you very much. And so hopefully perhaps some of the people watching this now will be coming to work for you and at Woodhouse in the next few years and supporting Hertfordshire's interior design industry. So wish you all the best for your future career choices. Thank you very much and have a pleasant evening.